Does everything have a bright side to it? Of course. It doesn't always outweigh the negatives, but everything has a bright side to it. This makes happiness a choice. And here we say that the discipline of being happy is the ultimate discipline. With that said, welcome to the Ultimate Discipline Podcast, where we meet with people who are practitioners of this exact discipline, and we hear their cool stories of cultivating happiness through challenges in their life. I am your host, Sean Greenspan. Let's get to it.
Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Sean.
Hey, I hope you had a happy Memorial Day weekend.
I did. It was very relaxed. It was unplugged. I'm not the most. My go-to isn't to relax and unplug, so I make that a priority. It always pays dividends.
Yeah, you used relax and unplug together twice now. Do you correlate the two?
I do. I think that unplugged leads to me personally experiencing a more chill, relaxed, personal vibe. Yeah.
Definitely.
And you know, the thing that maybe if I tie it all the way back, why I even gave you that response is when I left my sales executive career and decided to move into coaching full time. My wife and I made a decision to unplug. That's what we called it, for a month. And we bought a 22-foot Winnebago Chieftain motorhome. And the first ambition was to go as far as we could go. And then we're like, wait a minute, if we're truly going to relax, why don't we just keep it a little closer to home? And so we never even left the state of Oregon. We parked by the Metolius River for a few days. We made our way down to Crater Lake. We were there for a few days. We went to Southern Oregon and the mountains and there for a few days. And then we spent like the better part of 2.5 weeks just slowly meandering up the Oregon coast. And I kept a journal, and it was 2.5 weeks before I kind of hit this point where I felt like, oh shit, that's what it feels like to be relaxed. Like my nervous system hadn't felt that level of relaxation, I don't know, for years, maybe even a decade or more. And so I've played with that idea of keeping that alive as a coach and in my life now. And I guess that's kind of the tie-in to maybe why I gave that answer in the first place, because I don't think our culture does a very good job of fostering relaxation or unplugging. And I'm not, I couldn't do that all the time. It's good for me and fits and, here and there, but it's not my default. So that's why I know that I need to do it.
Man, there is a lot of good little nuggets in there to unpack. I love that you connect the two, because often at the end of the workday, what do you think that the average American does is sit back and flip on the TV while they're also scrolling on their phone, and maybe even have a laptop or an iPad next to them.
Yeah, sounds about
that
right.
Is like proven over and over to not be relaxing. It's like overstimulating. It doesn't help with sleep. And, like the more present you can be, which, you're not really present always in front of screens, especially not in like a non-creative setting. I'd say this is one of the few settings that you kind of are. But yeah, I think a lot of people conflate the two, right? And think that like sitting in front of a TV is a form of relaxation. It is in some ways, it relaxes the body, but I don't think it relaxes like the central nervous system, like you were saying. So that was, my girlfriend always gets on my parents and her parents about that too. They're like, we're just going to relax. They flip on the TV. She's like, read a book, draw, like do yoga. That's relaxing. But man, so you took a month off and didn't leave the state of Oregon. I love that. I had to come back to that, because I once went to Australia. I was there for 2 weeks, and people don't realize Australia is about as big as the US. And I was down southeast in Melbourne, which is maybe, let's call it where New Orleans would be in the US. And someone goes, oh, did you check out Perth? You were there for 2 weeks. You have to check out Perth. it's like if someone goes to New Orleans and like, hey, did you check out Seattle? Right? I'm like, no, I didn't check out Seattle. Right. Um, and I did the same thing. I mean, I only checked out Melbourne. I was there for 2 weeks. A couple days down the Gold Coast, just camping and hiking and just like very relaxed. But there's the no agenda is what I really think it comes down to. No agenda, no like true ambition just for ambition's sake.
Yeah. I love that. You're taking me back to like moments of that experience. I haven't thought about this in a long time, Sean, but I remember like when I think about it now, I remember the moments where I found joy. And some of them were repetitive. It was like, oh my gosh, like we were in state parks, so we weren't, hooked up to cable TV and all that stuff that maybe a newer, fancier RV might have. But so it was like primitive. It was camping in an RV, but we got up with the sun. We went to bed generally with, the sunset.
Yeah, good circadian
Right.
rhythm.
A little campfire action most nights. And it was so, I didn't know it until it happened, but it fed my soul at such a deep level. Like I was needing that and I didn't even know it.
That's And it's so funny how you said you didn't know it, and then after the fact, it's clear as day that it fed your soul, right?
For sure. Yeah.
That's just intuition. It's
Yep.
it's so funny how that happens. Like sometimes we don't know what we need until it happens, and I think if you can, sometimes you can't even articulate it. Like you just say something like "it fed my soul," right? Like you don't really know what it did, but it did something for you. That's like, the reason I'm bringing this up is I just signed up for an ultra marathon,
Hmm.
and my dad asked me, "Oh, you're doing another one of those? Like, why do you do them?" And I'm like, I don't know, but I love them, and I have to. Like, I can't stop.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
Yeah.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of I think having hobbies, but also space and time to prioritize things without
Yeah,
apology. Like, who cares if it feeds your soul in some way? The
yeah,
chances are that's spilling over into other parts of your life in good ways.
always,
Yeah, I love that.
absolutely. It's really interesting because I do want to unpack something. You as a coach, obviously helping people prioritize these things in their life, and we will get back to it. But you said something else that was beautiful. That at 2.5 weeks is when your nervous system, relax to a point that you like haven't felt. So, oh man, I got so much going on in my head because one thing that I want to bring up was I want to do the Pacific Crest Trail next year. So it's like a 4 to 6 month hike.
Hmm.
And one of my friends, he's like intense, and he's like, dude, let's like set the speed record. Like let's do this thing as fast as possible. Part of
Yeah.
me is like, that's awesome, right? But that also almost is like opposite of what I'm looking for. I'm
Yeah.
almost looking for like I hike for 2 months and then I meet some dude that's like, hey, let's go rafting in the Grand Canyon, and we never finish the PCT and we go you know what I mean? Just like whatever happens,
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like that's kind of more of what you guys did, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely something that there was a sense I kind of wanted to close a chapter of life because I'd been a sales executive for 15 years with one kind of entrepreneurial break in there, but I felt like I needed to close out a chapter to almost like signify this new chapter of my life as a coach, and not doing some of the things as a sales executive that I felt uh, just like hindered my ability to show up as my full self, right? And so having that month that kind of bridged those two chapters just felt
Hmm.
like the right thing to do. And then in the midst of that, I think it was probably like the second day on the road, I turned to my wife, Jill, and I said, hey, honey, wouldn't it be a cool experiment to just kind of check in and see like when, what does it really feel like to truly be relaxed? Because this trip is kind of set up for that. We don't have a big agenda. We're not putting on a lot of miles. Like we're chilling. And she was like, yeah, let's stay tuned into that. And it was
Yeah.
like Every day it was like, is this it? Well, if I'm asking if it's it, it's probably not it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
When 3-4 days went by and you didn't even ask, then it's probably it.
It did. That's exactly what happened, Sean. It was like probably for 3 or 4 days, we kind of let the conversation about it go. It was still like bouncing around in my head. And we were on a beach with our old dog it was close to Beverly Beach. That's where we were camped on the Oregon coast. And we rode our bikes like up to this little place that sold clam chowder, and we biked home, and then we went to the beach, and it was probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I'm not traditionally like a take a nap type of guy, but we were just like laying there watching the ocean. There wasn't a whole lot of other people because it was probably like a Tuesday or Wednesday. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up, and she was waking up too. And we both looked at each other and we were like, I think it just happened.
Yeah.
I think we hit it. I think we reached like peak relaxation. Yeah.
I love it. How beautiful is the Oregon coast?
It's not a bad place.
I went there once. In the summer, good time to go because, well, actually, first I went there in the winter. I took my girlfriend. She'd never been in the state of Oregon at the time. That was before we lived there, and she goes, that we're going in like November, and she goes, I'm gonna bring a couple like bikinis just in case. I'm like, there's no just in case. You don't need to bring them. Like, no chance. But we went to Oregon. We went to Oregon, and yeah, right. And we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? Like, we gotta hit the coast. We gotta hit Crater Lake. We gotta hit the Walla Wallas. Like, we wanted to go see everything around then. We just did 5 days on the coast. We did, again, complete agenda shift. Like, we hit the coast, and like you drive like 5 feet, and there's another hike, another park, another beach, another whatever. So it was, we just kind of bummed it up and down the coast for a while. I mean,
nice.
You guys were able to do 2.5 weeks. That's amazing.
Yeah, we were super bumming it up the coast.
That's how you should do it.
Yeah.
That's how you should do it, man. So you were talking about some of those things that feed the soul, right? Some of us are lucky enough to identify a bunch of those things. Some probably no, but maybe can't identify a bunch. But I can only speak for myself. For me, it's movement and outdoors. Absolutely. It's time with the family. It's reading, and then anything creative. Even things I'm really poor at, writing, painting, those things I'm not strong at. Love doing them. My paintings look like a little 3-year-old, but I try to paint a couple times a month. And that's actually been my new one. It's just like complete child mode. What I find is, and I think a lot of people might resonate with this, there's never like a dull moment in the day where it's like, this is painting hour. Like, it's like, but then whenever you do it, if you fit it in the morning, the middle of the workday, the evening, there's nothing lights on fire while you're away from your cell phone computer for an hour. Your business, if you're an entrepreneur, doesn't fail. All your clients don't say, where are you? Generally, I think I just see good things coming out of it. And I want to know, either with yourself or kind of like with clients, like, is that like a topic that you talk about like a lot, like prioritizing these things that we'll go back to feed the soul? Mm-hmm. Because, I to me that's like living, but it's so easy to be like, oh, I have this text to send. I have to pick up this from the grocery store. I have to send these emails. Like, there's always other things, but this to me is like the key to balance in life, is how to like just do like these things. And, that's kind of what I've been playing with in my head as of recent.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite conversations to have, not just with clients, but with entrepreneurs or executives, because I think of people who have a desire for kind of like living full on, and maybe even living a legacy, or leaving a legacy, or living a legacy, or being in a position of influence or having impact. Someone who says something like that, I think, has this interesting relationship, and it's a friction type relationship with that tug of war between doing the things I enjoy in life, and how do I integrate that with my work? Because if I'm like pulled to be the best, or let's say top whatever 5% or 10% of what I do, like that's the kind of person I love speaking with, because there's a lot of passion there, and usually a deeper reason or calling for doing the work, whatever the work is. And that person probably also has a healthy interest or desire for, some kind of, use the term balance, like not working just for the sake of work, or not earning money just for the sake of earning money, but also to live, there's a recognition of, life is short and it's happening every day. We're living it now. So how do we make the most of today and not fall into that trap of when X, Y, Z happens, then I can live the life I want. And my challenge, one of my favorite challenges as a coach, is to have people living into whatever they desire as soon as possible. And that's always a rich conversation, and it's designed to like challenge someone. It's designed to make someone's brain hurt. Like, how do I live into the thing that I maybe see out there, whatever, 2 years or a year or 6 months? How do I live into it now, right? Because there's no guarantee that there's tomorrow. So how do we make that happen now, or at least elements of that happen now? And the irony is thinking from that perspective usually significantly closes the gap of possibility of what somebody thinks they might be able to achieve in 6 months or a year or 2 years, and they start to live into that now. And that's, to me, that's that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Living into something now, right? As you're saying, do you think you could expand upon that a little bit? Because I think there might be some confusion on people might always come back to like, well, I need this to live it now. My interpretation is it's a little bit more of, it's a little more in our control than we might think. And it's a little bit more also maybe, like, I feel like there's always a creative way to live it now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just want to hear kind of whether it's an example or kind of like a little more about what you mean about that, because I think that people might be stuck on that, but that's obviously an intriguing point. I can live whatever life I dream of. I can live it now. Like, let me hear.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give you an example of a conversation I had at one point where a person who is exceptional at what they do, and so by definition, because they're exceptional at what they do, they have more opportunities to do some version of that than they even have time to do it. So they've got boundaries in place, and yet, in a conversation that's pretty transparent, maybe over a beer in this case, the person says to me, gosh, I feel like I'm, kind of crushing it, but something's missing, or there's elements that I can't, like, I'm who am I to poke holes in the success I'm having? And there's still elements of life that feel like off for me. And my question was something along the lines of, just like, well, what is it? What feels off? Or, if you could step into the future a year and look back and things were the way that you kind of like want them to feel, like what would feel different? What would look different? What would you be doing more of? What would you be doing less of? And this person looked at me and said, well, if I was really unapologetic with you, I would want to be making the same amount of money or more. I would want to be working no more than 15 hours a week in my business. I would not be getting on airplanes to go see a client or anyone else unless I absolutely was thrilled to do so. And I would have 2 6-week periods in the year that I wasn't working, but my business didn't fold. It was still going. And I was like, great, what are the 2 periods of the year? And she said, I think August to mid-September and mid-December to the end of January for some personal reasons and travel and that sort of thing. And I was like, great, you've got good clarity. Now all you got to do is like get creative with working it backwards, the hard work, right? But how can you live into that today? And so one small decision she made in this, conversation was, gosh, I never really thought it could be quite as easy as just telling my clients, hey, you know what? Like, I don't get on airplanes anymore. Like, I conduct meetings virtually. And if there's an opportunity for me to get on an airplane that feels good for both of us, like, I'll do it. But that's a switch I'm making in my business. And it actually might differentiate her from others that do what she does in a good way, right? Because it saves everybody time and money. And yeah, and so it was starting to stitch together that longer term idea of what like really was meaningful for her, but she didn't want to lose the impact. She didn't want to like lose the money. And I think that those are the puzzles that we always get to like play with. How do we put it together? Understanding that when we get there, there's going to be other desires, but that's part of the fun of playing. That's part of the fun of playing the game, right?
It is, as long as you're like aware of the game, right?
Yeah.
I like that story. I like that story because, like you said, like just work it backwards and just take a small step, right? I mean, if she really didn't enjoy these, flights and these travels, maybe time away from family, maybe additional expenses that she could have been incurring, like, why do it, right? And then also, of course, travel gets in the way. There's opportunity cost. Like on a day you're flying and trying to squeeze in a work day, maybe you don't get the workout in or whatever.
Yeah.
When I heard you say living the life that you want to live, right? When I kind of made a decision about 2 years ago, which was when I decided to start the podcast, even though I didn't start it till much later. And I started writing the blog that I need many hours, 7+ hours a week, in deep spiritual thought. To me, that's some mindfulness practice, not meditation, something I would consider like inner work. So maybe like, I guess it kind of like looks like meditation, but maybe like thinking through limiting beliefs. So it's like active thought, but I guess I'm still like sitting there with my eyes closed, right? Like, so it could look like meditation. Writing in a journal, writing in a blog, podcast, and then learning. So like right now I'm going through the Mind Change course. It's actually a really cool course about like doing some pattern interrupting to change the way you store your memories and basically open up neurological pathways to, free yourself, if you will. And so I started thinking, I said, great, these are the things I want to do. It's about an hour a day. Well, right now I have a full day, so we need to find time, right? Mm-hmm. And I had the brilliant idea that when my business got to this amount of money, then I'll be able to take my foot off the gas, right? And do it. But that doesn't work because first, when you get to that amount of money, you want more, right? Mm-hmm. Second is the way my business was constructed, because I didn't do it thoughtfully. I built the business around me, so that much more money meant that much more time. Yeah. But put those things to the side. I built the business the same way. I had the same desires to earn more. Yeah. That still wasn't the thing that I think would free me. And the thing that I think would free me was the 80-20 method. Like, I am not special in this scenario. I'm sure we all are, where my phone buzzes with a text or a call every 10 minutes. I get an email, 10 an hour. I got meetings I'm trying to check on. I have, body sensations, got to stand up, got to go to the bathroom, got to eat, got to drink water, like the normal stuff. And not all of it is important or was done efficiently. And that is actually the part of my journey I'm on right now. I think I shared that with you. In business, being an entrepreneur, like business life just becomes so close that like I kind of put it in, I kind of put them together. But even things like this, like notice, like we didn't have like a prep call for this podcast. My first couple, I'd have like half-hour call on the block, like, hey, this is what's coming with the podcast. Instead, I'm like, no, let's trim that down. I'll give, Michael 10 seconds before the call. Hey, this is what the podcast is about. Um, and, and that is something that I'm starting to feel, more free, but like you said, it's actually not about feeling like you're free and you have time. It's about implementing things before you even feel it. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just doing it in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just waking up and doing it. So I'm just, instead of starting work at 6:30, I'm starting at 7:30. And whatever repercussions that takes on my business or my life, I just decided I will swallow them because I'm living it now. And of course, the funny thing is, you come in with a more clear head. First of all, when you're sitting there quietly, like that's when the best business ideas come, of course. And then, you come with more energy and like a different like type of person. So like that's kind of what came to me was like because I'm like I love the morning. So I wake up at 4:15 and do my stuff until like 6:30. Now like I added like an hour layer into these mornings of like mindfulness time. And I still get a little anxious. I really do. I'm like I got to get to these emails.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to tell myself, like, if I look back at the year and I made 80% of the money that I had the potential to make, but I spend an hour mindfulness every morning, that's a win.
Yeah. I'm curious, that time where you're practicing your version of mindfulness, and you're getting these like internal, I do need to get to the email maybe at some point sooner than later.
Yeah.
How do you negotiate? And this is, I'm truly curious, like, how do you negotiate for yourself, like the value of the mindfulness time, which may or may not give you an immediate like payoff versus the more, let's say, dopamine focus. Like I answer an email, I get a chemical dopamine hit because it's done, right?
Boom.
Yeah. How do you navigate like for yourself that internal dialogue or conversation between like the longer term benefit things that you prioritize and put at the first of the day and like this incessant, that little thing in the back of your mind that's like, oh dude, it's time to get to work. You got some emails piling up most likely.
Well, let me start by saying that's the best question I might have ever been asked on this entire podcast. And I mean that because you're thinking about how to implement, you know what I mean? Like, obviously, you're obviously really good at this and good at coaching at this, but I know you, Michael, but also I can tell from here that like you're a perpetual student. Like, so it's not just like, okay, I understand that because we all understand it. You want to like realize it. Like, I'm okay. I could sit down in the morning and do this, but I'm going to have that same thought. So awesome question. Short answer is poorly. I'm the guy, I handle it poorly, but I'll tell you, if you said, Sean, 23 hours of your day are going to be out of your control. They're going to be the shitty days and you are shitty hours and you have 1 hour to do something. What would you do? It'd be moving my body outside, taking a run, taking a hike. So that to me is like my core, I guess. And that's like that is my discipline. And I learned from that and tried to put that into my business, my mindfulness practice, my relationships. And I was watching a documentary on running called the Barkley Marathon. If you haven't watched it, it is so funny for a documentary on running. It's on YouTube only. Okay. It's this like old dude down in Tennessee who has this, he calls it a marathon. It's 100+ miles. So it's not a marathon. He holds it in late November in the mountains in Tennessee. And it's 5 20-mile loops. Now, the issue is he changes the course every year and he makes it longer every year. So he's been doing that for about 20 years. Now it's about 5 30-mile loops. There's no trail, nothing. I mean, it is just so funny to sign up for it. You have to like buy him something. And they interviewed him like, how do you choose what you wanted? He's like, well, last year I didn't have any good socks. They all had holes in them. So I asked everyone for men's socks. Like, he's just the funniest guy ever. And if like 100 people start, mostly like 0 people finish or one person, like it's no one even completes it. They interviewed the guy that completed it. And the really fucked up thing about this race, Michael,
Yeah.
is 5 times, I guess 4 times technically, you pass your car. So 4 times you can say, "Oh, my warm clothes, my camping gear, my food is right there." Right? I
Yeah.
I did a race in Utah where when I like hurt my foot, I was 22 miles away from the car. So I was like in the wilderness. Like even like the best case scenario was run back. So I was like, I don't really have much choice. I'll go back. But this, like, you can quit 4 times. And they interviewed him. They said, "How come you didn't quit?" And he said, "I shut down the conversation. So there's just no conversation in your head. There's no negotiation in the moment." So it's a very long way of answering your question. But if I myself don't set a goal, and this is the beauty of goals to me, that I'm going to sit there for an hour. It's not that an hour is a magical number of meditation for meditation. It's otherwise, I'll get up at 48 minutes and tell myself I did a good job. And now there's 2 things. One, I, 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 I succumbed. How do you say that? Past tense. Like
Yeah, I think yeah, you got it.
there we
Succumbed.
go to the pressure, right? But the
Yeah.
other thing is, I also feel like I kind of quit a little bit. It's like if you say, if I say I'm gonna go take a long run and then you come back, you always kind of feel like I could have ran more. So I feel like I'm gonna go run 15 miles. When you finish 15 miles, great, goal achieved, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying this is one of those concepts I understand very well, but I haven't realized it yet. I haven't implemented into my life with complete conviction, right? Like I have with my exercise, right? Like today, I ran for 2 hours. I did a timed run today, and at 2 hours, I was back at the house, like perfect. Then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go do my meditation. And I was gonna sit for 30 minutes, but then I had to go to the bathroom. And I started getting hungry, and I was like, cool, I'll just knock it down to 15. And at the end, I didn't even feel good about myself. So that's it's kind of like setting it up ahead of time. And I don't want to make this long answer even longer, but I'll tell you another area that I have actually implemented it well is sleep.
Mm,
I wake up at 4:15.
yeah.
Everyone says, "How do you wake up at 4:15 every day?" It's very simple. Monday to Friday, I have an alarm on my phone that goes off at 4:15, and then another one at 4:16 and 4:17. You do that every day, and it's not an option. You just commit. That's the one thing I'll never change. I'll never turn these alarms off. When it's like 8:15 and you finish dinner and you have the choice to sit on the couch, drink a beer and watch TV, or whatever you're go to bed, like you're gonna just go to bed. Like you're gonna get into the habit of waking up because you know the alarm's coming.
Yeah.
And then when the alarm comes, I promise myself, and this is where integrity comes in, that whatever alarm I set the night before, I will not, I will stick to. So, I drove in here late last night. I didn't get bed till like 10:30. So I set my alarm at 5:30 today. But like I set that like actually in the morning because I knew I was gonna, like the morning before, I knew I was gonna get to bed late.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it all comes down to not negotiating in the moment because we're
Mm,
very emotional in the
mhm.
moment, right? We're
Yeah.
biased to the present moment. Um, Versus it's why like when people talk about my exercise equipment's over here, they say they don't count reps. Some people are like, oh, I just go to failure. Like that is not good because you can't track progress and you can't keep yourself honest, right? If you can do 50 push-ups, do 50 push-ups, and next time, if that was easy, do 55 next time. That's
Yeah.
easy, do 60 next time, but count,
Yeah.
and keep yourself accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love it. That's it's
That's
fascinating.
like it's a
Yeah.
passionate topic for me.
Yeah. 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 It's one thing that occurred to me too is like I was sitting there hearing you and I was thinking to myself, is it only through, you know, discipline around doing something inherently challenging, and that's going to be different for everyone, where we get the most reward and the most satisfaction? And I thought back on like, you know, some of the most challenging things that I've done in life. And those moments
Hmm.
feel like so like such a part of who I am that define me for better or worse, right? Like
Mm,
I'm connected to some of them from an ego perspective. Like, yeah, I did that. And if I
yeah,
can do that, I can do these other hard things too. But
yeah.
I'm just like, I'm paying attention to my thought stream as I was like hearing you talk about kind of how you navigate this friction in your life. So I deviated a bit from the question, but it was just
No,
something.
that's beautiful. Do
Yeah,
you
just
like now I'm thinking about, do you think that's true that we're like that things around discipline are more like monumental to our
I mean, for me, I've kind of that's a good question. I've never really thought about it. It's a good thing for me to journal about. So thanks for that. But generally in this moment, I do associate a certain degree of like I guess confidence and courage and just being proud of having accomplished certain things in when they felt maybe impossible or hard at some point, and having to go through that process really is what probably creates the like having to navigate that mostly from a mindset perspective is the thing that gives me the confidence and the courage.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too because I recently had a conversation with a woman. This was at an entrepreneur conference. And I met this woman from Ukraine, and she had moved from Ukraine before the country was attacked by Russia. And so that wasn't part of the conversation. This is before that happened. And she lives in the Dallas area. And I asked her, I said, "Oh, what brought you to the US or Dallas?" And she said, "Well, I had a government job in Ukraine." And she goes, "In Ukraine, just because you have a government job doesn't mean you don't work hard." Like I was putting in 60 and 70-hour weeks at a government job in Ukraine because that's kind of what you're expected to do.
Hmm.
And she said, and there's not as much inherent opportunity in Ukraine as there is the United States. And I wanted to be rewarded for my efforts. And I was like, that's cool. So what's what's happened? And it had been 2 years since she'd come to the US. And she goes, well, when I first came to the US, I had a friend who lived in Dallas, which has brought her to which that's why she ended up there. And she said, I wasn't in the US more than 2 days when I just looked around and I recognized, oh my God, there's like so much opportunity for people here and they don't even see it because they're like in the fishbowl, right? They can't recognize all the opportunity because it's all around. And she said, and the second thing I noticed was she said, for the most part, like Americans like to be comfy. And she goes, and a lot of them are really lazy. And she goes, at that moment, I knew that I could come here and succeed. And she goes, and my measurement for success was to create $1 million, not just net worth, but cash in 2 years. And I was like, have you done it? And she's like, absolutely, I've done it. And like, she had created a real estate company and everything. So it was just like, it was a moment of like experiencing the perspective of someone else who came from somewhere else and is making the most of an opportunity here for herself and her own reasons,
Good
right?
for her.
Yeah, but it caused me to think. Like I've reflected on that several times. Like, wow, okay, I fall into that category of, being comfortable with life
Everybody
and
does.
yeah, and how good it feels when I challenge myself in some area, whether it's through thought work or a physical challenge, knowing that it's going to be hard as hell, probably, but that journey that you have to navigate between where you start and whatever the finish line looks like, it's not necessarily crossing the finish line. It's the closing the gap. It's that journey.
It's the journey.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that sounds so like
No, it
woo-woo, but
doesn't, because you're explaining it. You're explaining it well. If you just came in and said, "Hey, it's the journey, it's not the goal," yeah, but no, don't, uh, I'm fine. You had me captivated there.
yeah. It's just, perspective is such a big piece of, I think, the journey for everyone. Because if you're an ultra marathoner, you are having that experience of running these, for me, what feels like a pretty crazy long distance. I've run half marathons and marathons, both on trail and road. And
That's awesome.
it's like that was a decade where I was pretty like focused on pushing myself in that format. And all of those things felt completely out of reach. I had a sense in the half marathon that like, I could probably even fudge my way through this and accidentally do it. It would hurt, but I trained for it and I learned and I got to play with and tweak like, okay, how do I get better at this? How do I have more fun with it? Like what would a trail race feel like and all those fun things. But it just, there's something about that, that going through the growth or change process that amplifies for me. It awakens almost this part of my like human spirit that hadn't been quite awakened or alive before.
Man, that is the second time that you actually brought something like that up. And that just excites me, Michael, because the other time was you said, my nervous system, I never knew it could be this relaxed, right? And when I heard that, but then you liked it, right? That's what comfort is. People think this is like the best state, right? Like there's other levels of awareness and happiness and relaxation out there that I find come from some discipline, right? Hence the name of the podcast and kind of the way I'm attempting to live my life.
Yeah.
But hearing the way that like you kind of like spoke about it, it's like you don't even know unless you try. And you talked about like also like the journey is fun too. So like you get that feeling at the end, but it's actually the journey. And while we're talking about running, right? Today's Wednesday, so Monday.
Yeah.
I tried to run up at pace for 2 hours and it was 96 degrees and humid. And I just moved from Canada where the hottest it was in the last 4 months was like 40. And I was beat. I mean, I was like dripping. I had no electrolytes on me. I had no water on me actually. So I was just like beat at the end. But then after, so you run that far, what are you gonna do when you get back? You're gonna hydrate and get your electrolytes. You're definitely gonna stretch, which like, if I just took a little run and wasn't training, I just don't prioritize stretching. I should, but I don't. Then after that, you're going to definitely refuel and probably not with junk food because your body needs some good nutrients. You're going to get to bed early and make sure you get your sleep that night. You're going to feel so relaxed mentally that you'll probably make an hour to read and all this other stuff. So I go back and forth with my friend Marty, and it's funny because about like whether we should have goals, right? Because achieving a goal doesn't lead to happiness, but I think the journey to a goal leads to happiness. And it's little brother who got me into these he does 100-mile runs. I'm signing up for one later this year, my first. And he always says, he's like, Sean, like I eat the healthiest when I'm training for 100 because I'm training so hard every day. I got to eat healthy too. And I sleep the most. And I even practice meditation, all this stuff. So it is about the journey. And, Peter Attia, he's actually from the Pacific Northwest too. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I am familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about something called emotional acceleration. And he says, when you're in a plane and you're sitting there and you're going 500 miles an hour in the air, it's calm as can be. You don't feel it. But when you're taking off, right, and you're going from 0 to 100, you feel like you're thrown back. And it's the acceleration that we feel. And I feel it's the same with emotions, right? If you work really hard at something, then you achieve it. That's where the relaxation comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm kind of like connecting the dots a little bit here in a new way on this spot. This is a fun conversation.
I lit up the last couple things you said. Me too.
Yeah. Gosh, what other fun things can we talk about here?
I know, right? Well, unfortunately, looking at the clock here, and we are kind of winding down.
Yeah.
Mike, I think you have. I know with all my heart that you have a lot to offer this world, this my audience, and I just want to, ask like we're based on the topics like we talked about. What comes to mind as like one small actionable thing that people could do to, like, you know, lead themselves towards happiness, discipline, more like relaxation, whatever topic you kind of want to choose, but
Mm.
more of like a habit or something, and it doesn't have to be the habit or the thing, but more like one thing or one habit.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, this is just totally off the top of my head, but
Of course.
I think, and this is applying to me too. And I've only shared this with one other person, so I want to use myself as an example because I challenged myself with this question in the last 2 weeks. What what one thing do I have a desire to do, but for some reason I'm either lacking, maybe it's the bravery or the logistics. Like there's some reason that I'm just not committing to pulling the trigger to something that I truly desire to do, right? Maybe I'm making it too big or too hard or whatever. And for me, a desire was to leave Portland for 4 to 6 weeks in the winter and go live in a mountain town where the ski hill is like no more than 20 minutes away. Because that's something I love to do. I love to go just like rip the mountain. And that's talk about good for the soul. Like for me, that's my absolute like go to unplug, have a good time, rejuvenate myself, and then I'm ready for almost anything. Right?
Yeah, so it's asking yourself that question, what do I need to do?
What do I need to do? And so I committed to someone just the other day that I'm going to select between 5 locations. I'm going to narrow it down to one, and I'm going to reach out to people that I know who might have some connection to that area and say, do you know of anybody that knows of a rental, an Airbnb, something like that? And just like put it on the calendar. Like
uh
put it out there.
Put it
And
out
so,
there and
yeah.
hope something comes back, right?
Well, and be more persistent, like not just hope, but like
Yeah.
follow it through until I've got like the deposit down, the full thing paid, whatever it is, so that it's booked, so that it's on the calendar, right?
Michael, I
Yeah.
think you already put it. I'm sorry to cut you off. I think you put it out there because yesterday, me, Emma, and my friend Jason booked. We bought the Epic Pass, and the Epic Pass gives you like access to these mountains.
Yeah.
And we just decided that, so we move every month, that we're going to live January in Lake Tahoe. We're
Okay.
going to live February in Whistler, and
Okay.
then March we're still trying to figure it out. So we will connect. Let's go somewhere, man. Let's get some skiing in.
Oh my God, I love this.
Look
Okay,
at
well
it.
there you go. I think we've all got that thing that is looming or lurking in the back or maybe front of your mind. And there's some obstacles that are just standing there. And I'm such a believer in like not even knowing necessarily like why or how it all makes sense, but just knowing that there's something that's asking you or calling you to do this thing that's probably going to stretch you in some way. And that
Yeah.
you're not going to know all the answers until you actually get your ass out there and do it. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to
I
be as
lo-
big as what I just said, but my challenge would be like, what is that for the listener or for you? What is that? And what very tiniest, smallest action can you take to move in that direction?
that's what it is. Just
Yeah.
one thing today.
Yep. Just one little thing.
I just love it, Michael. I thank you so much for taking the time to hop on today. I know we're busy in the middle of the work day, work week, and I there's so many good nuggets in here. I hope people could take out. I just want to thank you again, and I look forward to skiing with you this winter.
Well, thank you. You've challenged my thinking and you've elevated my energy, and those are always two good things to have happen in a day.
I appreciate that. Those two things mean a lot to hear from you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Michael.
All right, Sean, take care.